Following the development of Fewhaven Rail Yard, the Philadelphia region is currently the most prosperous it has ever been. Household wealth is at an all-time high, unemployment at an all-time low, and life for citizens is generally full of fun things to do. But much of the region still lies underdeveloped, and demand for housing and jobs from the wider county is booming, forcing the city planning department to consider what's next. On inspection of a geological report, the council identified a large ore deposit in the southern part of the region which could be utilised to drive trade and provide additional jobs and homes as required by the county. And so they've decided to sell off the land to a coal mining company, with a commitment to develop a new housing settlement to support workers within proximity of the mining site. Let's dive in. So here is the ore deposit that we are going to be utilising for this build, and as you can see, it is a reasonable distance away from the rest of the development that we have here. So the first challenge that we're going to have is how we connect this up to our existing road network. Now, I don't think a development of this size, where we're going to have a smallish housing project and not a huge amount of industry over there right now, I don't think the city would therefore invest in a highway project just yet, but we do have this collector road that skims around the outside of Haven Wood. That was always kind of planned to extend onto the southern peninsula, as it were, of the region. So the most effective thing for us to really do is to connect this up on into where the housing development is going to sit over there. As you can see, we've got some quite challenging terrain to navigate as we go across here, but there's this natural gap in between the two hillsides here, which I want to utilise and bring the road kind of wrapping around the hillside and down into the valley area on and round to meet up with where our development's going to be over this side. And that then can provide a alternative connection to any future highway projects for people to get from the Fewhaven, Gaudy Bay, Atkinson area into where the main central downtown will probably later be. We're going to be developing up to that first. So let's go ahead and connect this up in. So importantly, I want to make sure that constant slope is on within Anarchy, and I'm also going to, no, we won't force it to the ground, but I want to be really, really mindful of these contour lines as we go around. So that gives us main road access down to the area. We've got some dodgy kind of little bits that we want to sort out here and tidy up a little bit. So let's go ahead and do a tiny bit of smoothing. So I quite like the retaining walls on the cut through there, although I do feel like at this stage of the city, the expense to put in the retaining walls would be far too much. So let's actually go ahead and remove these, and we'll just have our lovely new cliff texture up here. And I think that's probably just a little bit more sensible for the current stage that the city's at. But let's also go ahead and trim off some of these floating trees that we now have on our cliffs that would definitely not grow in this situation. So if we head back down to here for a second, we can see this collector also has really fast routes out onto the highway to take people out and across the rest of the region, externally in any direction they wish to go. So instead of having a larger highway connection here, which wouldn't be feasible at this stage of the development, this provides an excellent alternative option to get them into the existing Philadelphia town, but also out of the region as they desire as well. Now, obviously, we're going to have trucks and things exporting coal from here. So as this part of the region develops, maybe the city will invest more into the likes of cargo trains and that kind of thing in the region. But for now, it's just this simple road connection, which will take them there reasonably quickly. Now, with the coal mine sitting up this end and the main housing development going to be down here, I'm thinking with this road it would be most sensible to have an option that flows around the town as opposed to any trucks having to drive directly through the development and delivering all that kind of noise pollution, etc. to the region. So let's bring this road up like this, and we're just going to create a nice simple junction. Just going to flow on round the edge of the region here. We're going to follow this contour line down. And we can head off more centrally here as well, and then that'll provide access to the coal mine itself over there. And we'll come back to fixing out this junction in a little bit, but let's now go ahead and talk about laying out the foundations for our new housing development. But before we do that, let's have a dive into some inspiration, shall we? And big shout out to Henry Reinock here, who suggested having a look at the school called River. So there's lots of inspiration and build up to density towards the Philadelphia town centre. And you were absolutely right. So I was having a look along here, and maybe it's a bit far out, but I found this little area, Williams, over here, which has 2 mines in it. So a ton of inspiration we can take for our coal mine here. We'll revisit that in just a second. But in terms of the suburb, there's a lot of inspiration we can take from here as well. So we have this intersection first up, nice and simple. I think we can do something with this, a little bit of lane mass, specific right turn lanes here as well. But also, I was having a look, and we've got frontage roads with housing along it. So I'd also like to explore that as an option in our neighbourhood. And looking beyond that as well, we can also see that it's very plain kind of suburban cul-de-sac streets, actually. Lots and lots of cul-de-sacs in here. We can do that in cities. We come onto a big school over here, which looks like it's a high school and an elementary school complex combined. So again, we can definitely do something with that. But nice, interesting suburban neighbourhood layouts I think we can see here with these cul-de-sacs like I mentioned on the end. But also if we come further down the high street, we also have pockets of commercial here. Can I call this little box? I'm not sure if that's the term. But some local commercial buildings here with dedicated parking front and back. Really, really like that as inspiration. And then onto a little bit more, what I'm going to call little box over here, a small kind of commercial shopping strip. But also, if we look a little bit further south, we also have a church with a large cemetery around it, which I think lends itself perfectly actually to the UK church asset. So even though we are going for a generally more North American style of neighbourhood for this, so lots of single family homes around suburban road layouts, there's even some townhouses in here as well, I do also want to introduce some forms of medium density and more affordable housing for the workers at the actual coal mine and the industrial area itself as well. So we'll also be adding those in, but it will be more medium density than high density, I want to say. So maybe some of the low income Southwest US pack buildings would be appropriate for this. But anyway, a little source of inspiration for how we're going to lay out our neighbourhood, and particularly where we've got these kind of very straight roads we've already laid out here. I think there's a lot that we can take from this area. So first off, I have just actually replaced these roads with local highway roads, which I feel like is more appropriate. It's not a major highway project, but we don't need a big 4-lane road with sidewalks, I think, coming out to this neighbourhood. So that feels like a better fit. And the first thing I do want to do is start going ahead and placing some schools in, because I think they're going to be central to this neighbourhood. We're definitely going to want a high school and an elementary school over here. If we just take a little look at our schooling situation, we are still undercooking the elementary side of it, and we've only got a slight overcook on the high school. So with this being quite far away from the other developments, I definitely think there would be investment in both of those things. So I'm going to go ahead and place them first because they're large footprints and I want them to feel quite central to the neighbourhood. So I'm actually going to go for the UK secondary school just because I really like the footprint of this. I feel like because it's quite big in that sense, it also has that slight US vibe to it. And I'm going to place it quite close up to this road, round about here, and then we're going to create an entryway into it. Now, with all of the streets around our actual suburban neighbourhood, I am going to use my Road Builder Road suburban street, which basically doesn't have road markings on it, which I feel like is a much more appropriate use of road for a suburban neighbourhood than having the yellow lines on it. Not really sure that that fits too well for the vibe we want to go for here. So we'll use these for a lot of it, and we'll have some grass-lined sections of it and that sort of thing as well. So let's bring this out in front of the school. And we do have a small amount of parking in there, although the roads, is there no road access into this school? Am I only just seeing that? So cars need to drive through that tiny little alleyway. Okay, well, that's fine. That's fine. Let's actually go ahead and create a larger parking lot for the school, because I think that is something that would be needed in this space. So I'm going to create a small little alleyway section in between our 2 parking lot roads here. We're going to want Anarchy on. I want to try and make sure those 2 sections of parking are relatively equal, which that looks okay. And then we'll go ahead and we'll just curve it in like this, and we can create some nice car park designs out of that. And then let's have a pedestrian crossing at this point, and I am going to join them into the actual road so that we do get the crossings like that, so it's all marked out. We may remove some potentially from these entrances a little bit later on. Now we do have extensions for this school building, but they both sit within the plot, so we don't really need to worry about kind of leaving extra space for extensions further down the line for this. We do need power and water to this area though. So let's just pause the game for a second and we'll come back to that. And then based on what we saw on Google Earth, I also want to add the elementary school into this complex. And I'm thinking the US Southwest Elementary School actually goes reasonably nicely with the UK one. So this is what we're going to have here, and we want to leave space for sports fields and that sort of thing in between. Let's just plop that there for a second. So I really want to get some functional parks into this space, and ideally sports fields. However, I was thinking, I mean, soccer maybe not the most appropriate for a US complex, but the American football field is a little bit too built up, I think, for this neighbourhood. I don't think we really want a stadium of this size attached to our schools here. And of course we can customise it and all the rest of it and take off some of that, but I still feel like maybe that is a bit overkill. So I am, unfortunately, kind of more inclined to go for this soccer field. And we can put the stadium on the school side there and then detail around it, because we do also have some of Sully's magnificent baseball decals as well, which I think would go really nicely into this space. And they are quite big, but we could definitely fit 2 of these into here side by side, very similar to what I see on Google Earth in this area. Now we do need to smooth out this landscape a little bit more, just to, oh no, we'll pretend we didn't see that. We do need to smooth out this landscape a little bit more just to get that a bit flatter so we can have the decal showing through. But I think that looks quite nice. And we could potentially have some different parks in here. So let's actually just start by bringing this road round. So we'll grab our suburban street. We're going to bring it up to this point here. And then we're going to head off in this direction to wrap around the park. And we will also bring up a road this side so that that football pitch is now connected. And just looking at this school as well, it definitely looks like it needs rear access, as it were. So let's go ahead and grab an... I'm tempted to do gravel road for this, but because it's tarmac, let's do an alleyway road. And we'll bring this up around the back to connect that in. And I'm thinking, actually, let's just scoot it all the way around the park to connect up to this road here. And then that sort of makes that car parking that's on the side of the football pitch there make a little bit more sense too. And we could potentially cover this up with some decals to make it look like more of a pedestrian street. So that's something we can come on to when we detail it up. And then in this space, we can have a slightly more open area, perhaps with just a single playground of some description. We could use the new hilly playground, which I quite like. I think that's pretty cute. And also just seeing on this asset as well, we also have another access point here. So let's connect in a alleyway road like that. And then we can stick the hilly playground on this side. And then that all feels reasonably sensible. If we have a little look at upgrades here as well. So yeah, these do sit on the outside. That's not a problem. We have space here where we can add those in to extend the complex. Okay, so with the largest of the service assets in, I now want to start kind of going through and laying out some suburban street neighbourhoods. So we have this connection out onto the local highway over here. I'd also like to make one at this point. So let's bring out a connection there. And then I'm thinking this road could potentially kind of run around the edge of the whole neighbourhood. So if we kind of scoot it around the landscape like this, and that can feed out into the coal mine that side. And then we can also just bring this straight down to connect into the highway this side as well. And then we could have one more connection somewhere in the middle, let's say about here. Now let's just take a little look at this junction before we come on to the big box. So I do want to add in some lane mathematics here. So we'll upgrade each of these sections coming into the junction to the asymmetric roads, and that gives them the extra turning lane. But actually, for interest, I think we're going to keep that one like so, and then we're going to add the little slip lane in like we saw on Google Earth. So we'll just create a small little bend like that. And then we'll also make sure that these guys at the bottom are not turning right. So if they want to go right, they have to go that way and this way to turn in. And then there's dedicated turn lines on each of the other lanes, which I think works quite nicely there. We could add in extra line markings and things to make that junction a little bit prettier, but that works okay. Okay, so then for the big box, I'm actually going to have an alleyway road. Now, all of these roads I'm hoping are not going to be super traffic intensive. I think further down the line, if traffic becomes a problem, we're going to have a highway upgrade project, which would upgrade some larger highways around this neighbourhood. But for now, we're going to have quite a few junctions on these seemingly arterial roads. So this is going to come out into the big box area. And how I'm going to do it is I'm going to scoot the alleyway road round the back and then down the front here. And this is where we're going to have our parking outside the front of our shops. So I have this quite close to the highway road like this, and we don't want it to join in. We want it to remain completely separate. But we'll have this run up like that, I think, and then we can continue on the alleyway road this side, which can go into a neighbourhood at this point. And then here we've got space behind the shops. We can have a nice row here. So let's go ahead and find some commercial to put in. And these assets right here are going to be perfect for this, although they are level 5. So I do need to be conscious of that. But they'll fit really nicely onto our parking road. We probably want to pull them back a tiny bit to give a bit of pedestrian access in front of them. We have also got these as well, but they already have parking on them, some of them. Okay, this one doesn't. That's perfect. We can drop that one in over that side. That's only a level 2, so that's not too bad. So let's have a couple of those in either side, and then we'll try and find one more, I think, for this end. And yeah, we can slot that on there quite nicely. Let's just go ahead and move these up, merge them in so it does seem like one big long retail frontage section there. We can have a little gap between those, that's not a problem. Same for those, happy with the gap there. We'll want to remove some of the fencing and better bulldoze that. I'm also not super loving the blue colour here, so let's go in and change that and make that something a little bit more subtle. And then also wondering if we could add a little motel or something at the back here too, just to provide some accommodation for people in this neighbourhood. So I want to kind of keep this as an open yard like we saw on Google Earth. So I'm wondering if maybe a motel somewhere at the back here might work quite nicely. And I want to keep it relatively low level. It could even be this actually, that's quite nice and simple. We could have it here. Then we can still keep the yard that side. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. And then we also definitely want a gas station. Okay, so let's talk about the frontage roads here as well. So I'm going to use alleyway roads for this because I feel like that's the most appropriate thing. And we're just going to draw some out like so. So it's going to come straight off the highway and then go straight into this road. And I'd like to keep it as parallel to the highway road as possible. So yeah, something like that. Then we can have housing along here. And of course, we also need to drop in other service buildings here too. So I'm kind of thinking the US Southwest Firehouse could be quite nice here. Maybe it does actually sit in this corner so it's more central to the district, also with easy access onto the highway over here. So that could be placed in there. We're going to want police too. I think the US Southwest police station's a little bit too big for this. So I'm swayed towards just the small police station, which could actually go next to the gas station at this point here. Because then again, easy access onto the highway and out into the neighbourhood, sort of skirting around the outsides. And then medical is the next thing. So let's actually place this over this side. And the Southwest Medical Clinic is an absolutely stunningly beautiful asset. So I think this would be the perfect addition in here. I was going to put it over there, but I'm actually tempted to put it somewhere a slightly more front and centre actually. So maybe in this space over here. Let's just trim off that road there. And then let's have an alleyway road, which comes out from this road and then runs as a frontage road along here. And then this can also serve as a back entrance into our firehouse there and then connect back up into the neighbourhood this side. So let's go ahead and place this in. I think we'll give it just a little bit of breathing room here and put it somewhere right in the centre. Like that. And then that gives it pride of place up against the highway as well. It's just, it's an absolutely awesome asset. It's probably one of my favourite assets in the game. I just really love the car park designs. Love the vibe of it. Super cool. Although the palm trees may need to be switched out at some point, but there we go. Now the final thing before the residential is of course the church, as I mentioned. So we definitely want to have death care in here. And I'd like to emulate some of that vibe that we saw from the church on Google Earth. So it could actually even potentially go this side of the highway. If we place it in over here, we could then again create a small little frontage road for it. And then we can extend our cemetery out either side as well. Let's perhaps move it up to there. And then we could add a small amount of car parking in the other side of it. And then actually just connect back up this frontage road here. And we've still got space to decoratively extend the graveyard if we so wish. But for now, that'll do pretty nicely. So that's all of our core services into the development. So we need to get residences in now, but we also need power and water, of course. So we have got our wind turbines over here. So I'm thinking, I'm just checking we're underground. Yes, we're going to connect in a power source from here. So let's just go directly into this junction, and this is of course going to change over time as we require it, so that should provide power. And then with water and sewage as well, we're also going to need to bring this across. So I think what we will do here again is create a really ugly connection, pretending it is actually under the road into our neighbourhood over here. Now, all of these sections are going to be connected up internally, so none of these bits which aren't into the network at the moment will matter longer term. So let's go ahead and get in our road structure. So there's one bit in particular I saw on Google Earth which actually had a giant circle, which I really want to emulate here. So if we bring this road up to this point, and then I'm just going to create a little marker there, and then we're going to bring it straight up into that road connection there. This one's going to come up into here. And then from this point, we're going to create ourselves a makeshift circle. And then we also want to make sure that this is connected up nicely. So let's leave a little bit of space for housing. I think we could actually bring this out to here and connect it in there. And then we've got space for housing on this side, which will just vary up that grid pattern as well. So all of those smaller sections are now connected into the main road network. And then we can go ahead in here and start adding a whole load of cul-de-sacs. Okay, so how we're going to work our residential is the bulk of the middle section of our neighbourhood are going to be low density single family homes running all the way up to the top side of the map, as you can see here. Then down by the little box commercial strip, we're going to have a few sections of row houses like we saw on Google Earth. So adding a little bit more of that medium density into here. And then to the left of the high school, we're also going to have some more affordable housing, medium density condo style blocks around this space as well, which is a little bit closer to the coal mine, close to the high school, but also on the highway side of it as well. So that'll take some of the noise pollution from the highway, I guess, away from the single family homes, which will be situated more in the centre of the map. We will also dot in a couple of condo developments as we go along the main road across the north side, as you can see here. And definitely further down the line, there'll obviously be development on the other side of that road. It's not going to look so blocky forever, but this is the start of our little master planned coal mining town. So let's go ahead, click our fingers and get all of those residences in. Just like that. Now, if my voice sounds different to the first segment, it's because I've picked up a little bit of a cold between now and recording that bit, so apologies. Here we go. So we have got our little row houses as we'd planned up in this segment up here, which I think works really nicely. These are the US Southwest Pack row houses. Really like the sort of colour and consistency of them, and the fact they look quite different as well to everything else, which I'm quite enjoying in this area. I've just moved them back a little bit further away from the alleyway road we've used here, and then used some surfaces and some trees to make it feel a little bit nicer, I suppose, in this area. And then we've got parking using invisible roads up the back here, which works pretty nicely, so kind of pleased with that. And then when it comes to the residential across this side, what I have used is all US Southwest Pack assets, but we've got level 1s and level 2s over here, which are really tightly packed in, so they're all right up next to each other in terms of the zoning. Actually, I have just noticed I have dotted in some regular North American assets there as well, but yeah, there we go, there's a couple of them. And then as we go further out, we get to the larger sort of level 3, level 4, level 5 houses, which are more spaced out. So you can see here we have got gaps in between the houses. There's more space between them. It's more expensive housing the further away we go from that highway road at the backside over there. And we have also got these pedestrian paths dotted in, connecting a few of the different districts, like here as well, connecting up with some of these cul-de-sacs into the main roads to get people easily out into the commercial area and that sort of thing. I think that works quite nicely. The circles come together quite well with these houses dotted around it. So I have actually upgraded this to a regular 2-lane road so that we get the yellow markings on it, mainly because I didn't like how many cars were actually parking up it. But we do go back into some slightly more denser housing and some of the lower leveled housing as well. Now, quick reminder, I have said this before, but if you are using Plop the Growables and you're locking the levels like this, those houses will not level up. So making sure that you've got a good mix of some of the lower levels and the higher levels so that rent's affordable for everyone is quite important. And then we have some of the medium density, again, US Southwest Pack assets in here, gorgeous little buildings, just a couple of condos up against the road, and a few more over here as well. So I didn't put parking on these because it looks like they've got some kind of garage or maybe underground parking is what I'm imagining for these, so they're kept a little bit separate and a bit different there. And then again it goes into the slightly more packed, mostly level 1 and 2 housing as we come towards the park. And then over here it's more of an eclectic mix. I'm thinking this is probably the old kind of town side of the neighbourhood. It's going to be closer to where the coal mine is, so there's more of a mix of different styles of assets in here. And then we come on to this slightly more high density area with some medium condos. I think this one's actually from the China pack, this kind of cross one here in the middle. And then we've got the rest from the US Southwest pack, so lots of detailing to do around all of these. And we've also got the US Southwest pack low rent asset in here, which has an absolutely astounding amount of people in it. So 1,600 just in this one asset right here, which is pretty mad. But I thought that was really important to have some low rent housing here close up to where the coal mine's going to be positioned in just a second. Also got like a little park in there and more densely packed housing obviously down this side of the city. So we've kind of got this more spaced out wealthy section in the middle there, and the rest of it is generally lower level housing, which I think will accompany the coal mine quite nicely. So yeah, a ton of detailing to come in and do, but I do just want to say, before we do that, I have decided to name this neighbourhood after Jeffrey Tinney, one of my Patreons, very long-standing patron at that as well. So thank you, Jeffrey, for all of your support. We now have officially the town of Tinney in this area. And if you fancy having a district named after yourself, or you just simply want more Few content in your life, do consider checking out my YouTube membership or Patreon options in the description below. And there's various different tiers starting right from £1 on Patreon, and for a couple of pounds more you can get access to my members only series Behind the Build, where we go deeper into the city after every single episode. So if you fancy that and you want to support the channel, take a look at those options below. But anyway, let's crack on and get our coal mine in. So the ore area actually extends really quite far back into this little hillside here. So as a marker, I'm going to put a little piece of gravel road round about here, and then another one just at the back, just so that we can see the space that we're working with without that overlay on it and the horrific colours that come with it. So yeah, it is quite a substantial area. So what I am going to do now is actually start off by doing some terraforming. So I'm going to clear out the trees, which also helps to quite nicely mark out the area there too. And then we're going to take a quick Scooby on back to Google Earth to this area around Pennsylvania where we can see this mine here. Because what I do want to do is carve into the landscape like we see here and have these gravel roads going down. Potentially actually put the main mining unit at the bottom here too, which I think could be kind of interesting. And maybe we'll have one side which is more natural cliff, not actually sort of part of the mining area, but looks like it has been mined out and is kind of left to, well, let nature take over, I suppose, now. And then another side which is actually formed as part of the mining area, which is going to have quite a different sort of colour palette to it, I suppose. And then we also have this pool at the bottom, which I think I'd quite like to kind of experiment with, maybe with some of our water surfaces or something like that. Yeah, let's give this a go. But also, to note, we do have more industry elements up the top here too, and more over here. I mean, this is a whole area in itself, really, that section. So we'll focus on this little bit here too. And if we actually scoot across the map a little bit, there's more over here as well. So there's another one, another amazing example of almost feat of engineering, really, isn't it? To cut into the landscape quite like this. But then we also have this with the pipe going underneath the road here down into the actual mining area, which I think is quite interesting. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do this, but there's some inspiration that we can take from this for sure. Then we've got things like a huge scrapyard up next to it, more down here as well. Tons and tons and tons of it, in fact. Massive car yard over here. We've even got a sewage works, which I don't think we need in this area necessarily. But there's things like this kind of industrial warehouse site. I think there's some commercial strip up along the main road. Maybe it's used for other things, a gym or something perhaps. Is that over there? Or dance and gymnastics centre, there we go. But I think as one ore mine probably isn't going to sustain all of the jobs for the housing that we've put into Tinny, we're probably going to explore some options like this for an industrial area close to the mine as well. So we are going to start by terraforming out the landscape into the ridges and the layers as we see fit around this area before we go ahead and put in the actual industry or the surfaces or anything like that. So I do need to make sure that I leave enough room at the bottom of our pit here for everything that we're going to want. And you can see the bottom actually is much lower here than it is in these places. So I think we're going to go for somewhere in between. We're going to go around about on that hard terrain line there and just carve ourselves out a bit of a bottom to our pit to start off with. And then at least we know we've got something to aim for. And then before we do anything, let's definitely check that our coal mine actual starting area can fit into here, which it can. Lovely stuff. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make the brush size pretty small. So we're going to go right down to 20, and then we'll make the brush strength, I think about 35 is fine. So not too strong, but strong enough that it's going to actually get some work done as we go round. And then we want to follow these contour lines all the way around to create our ridges and our plateaus. So just dragging it quite smoothly, quite slowly along all of these contour lines like so, and we'll get some nice natural looking cliffs, I think. And then we want to go down a few steps, and we want to make it big enough that we're actually going to get that cliff texture in. It's going to look as severe as we want it to, and then we can drag it up to the edge here like this and just keep going all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done, and then we can worry about smoothing out truck lanes and actually placing roads and things and getting it down into the area after that. Okay, so totally forgot to hit record when I put the roads in, but there we go. So I have just used the gravel road, which of course we're going to cover up with the dirt road net lanes here. And I've just gone for this option of kind of gradually bringing it down around this level, down into the centre. We've got a bit of oddities here, which we can sort out with a touch of move it in this space. Pretty much just like that. And we kept the road going past this little inlet area that I've put in here, which is something that I saw on Google Earth. I thought maybe we could have some more piles or some more active kind of industry working going on there. And then in the bottom, we can have 2 active coal mines with this sort of watery puddle in the middle, and the gravel road can cross over it and then come down to this ore mine down here. And then potentially another one down the other end if we see fit. So that's the plan. And then we have also brought the road up across to this end, so I thought maybe we could have something up here which signifies the industry too, so it's nicely sort of spread out around the top of the actual ore mine. That's the plan, and then we're keeping this side completely clear of any roads or anything like that, and no ore mine, no active kind of area or covering or surfaces, or, well, we will put surfaces on it actually, but this is a section that's going to be very overgrown and try and look very natural, like nature has reclaimed the area as opposed to it having active quarry works going on. So let's go ahead and grab our first little coal mine here, and we'll snap to road, and we'll, oh my goodness, we'll try and get it positioned on the end of this road here. Yep, just like that. So with these, I am actually going to anarchy them over the roads for the most part, so I'm going to start off by just doing this section across this side, and actually now I see it, I do wonder if actually we probably don't need one down here, so I think we'll leave that. But what I do want to make sure actually is that we don't have ore trucks in this space, so if we get to here and then we just turn off snapping, what I'm going to do is try and create some sort of natural water shape that we can fill with some of our water surfaces. And the reason for not putting this area over that surface, because of course we can cover up the ore area with surfaces, is that we then won't have trucks and that sort of thing actually driving over the water. So I feel like that'll look just a little bit more realistic for what we want to have in this space. So then, yeah, we're going to bring it all the way up this side, and this is kind of going to be the boundary for the natural area at this point, and we'll bring it up to about here. And then we'll turn snapping back on and we'll run it all the way along the inside of this road, so we're keeping it in this area. And then when we get up to about here, we're going to cross over and we're going to do it slightly further up the hill, just so we're going to get those textures in these wider areas as we come up here. Okay, so that's one in, and then I do think, rather than putting it down the bottom, which is what I was going to do before, I don't think that makes too much sense. I think we're going to stick another coal mine in, yeah, because we still do, I mean, all the real resources around here, but we're going to waste some of it, and I think that's fine. But we could stick in another one up here, just for kind of the decoration purposes of actually having this machinery up here, more so than anything else. I think we will just put it in like that. And we can leave the area, maybe make it a little bit bigger once we've got in road structure and that sort of thing around it. We'll just join this road up around the front like that, so it is connected in. And in fact, let's go ahead and make the area a little bit bigger right off the bat. Something like that will do, I think, for that space. And we could potentially even have another one up here. I did have a little look in production, actually, and we're not too far off being in a deficit for stone. So it might be quite nice to have a stone mine somewhere here that we can put some piles into and that sort of thing for decoration. Just a very small area to mark the top of it. But I think we'll do that once we get a little industrial area into here. So how we're going to connect it up, I'm going to grab my main roads. This is definitely going to feed into this industrial space. So we'll bring this up. We'll bring it just straight out like that. And I do think we probably just want to flatten off a little bit of this area. So we'll make a slight valley. I'll raise it up a tiny bit from where the highway is. So we've not got too much of a severe slope going up into the ore area. In fact, actually, no, I'm going to do it the other way. I'm going to flatten it off to this level here, and this is where we can have the industry. So we'll get rid of that road in just a second. But if we have the industry up here, it'll make it kind of nice and different along this highway, because it's slightly raised versus this edge of the neighbourhood this side, and then it can kind of come down and feel like it's going sort of a little bit lower than the industry, which will give the drive along that road a nice dynamic. Not that it's necessarily what they'd actually do as city planners, but aesthetically wise, I think it's going to look nice. Let's flatten off those bits, and then we can flatten off an area here, smooth that out a little bit where we can bring a road up. So definitely making sure constant slope is on is going to be needed for this, so we'll just bring a road straight out of the highway here. We're not going to worry about major junctions at this point. This is what I would call a very new industrial development. And at this point in time, it's going to be relatively small. So I don't think having a major intersection project would be realistic in the development of the city. Further down the line, yes, perhaps, but for right now, no. So we'll bring this road out across here, and then we can create ourselves a kind of a bit of a sort of grid system industrial area estate in the middle. We could even bring that up straight through. In fact, the angles are slightly off, which I actually quite like. I think it adds a little bit more interest to the area. So let's do that. We can bring the ore mine connection in here. I think we'll have quite a nice open entrance into this. So I might actually bring like another connection here, which comes out of this junction, connects into there like that. And we could have some sort of green central island point in the middle of them. And then you just come into a big ore yard. That's what I'm envisaging for this at least. So then in this area, we can just have some generic industry. We've actually got slightly higher demand for offices too. So I'd like to mix in some office assets with it. I probably want some of the slightly more industrial looking offices, so something like that wouldn't go too amiss, I don't think, here. Or even this big blocky one actually looks quite good to me. And we could arrange those too, like they're in a bit of a campus there as well. And then let's find ourselves some industry to plop in here too. Okay, so we have a nice little mix of industry and office in here. Far too many smokestacks, so we'll come through and trim those off with better bulldozer. Like that. Get rid of a couple already. And we've got some bigger yard area detailing to do in here to fill it out nicely. But I did also put in some ore storage at the back here, and we do actually have a company in there already, which is great news. I'm really hoping that some of these pile ones fill up with companies though, so we'll wait and see about that. And then, wow, we have a lot of detailing to do around the quarry. So what we're going to be doing with this actually is a lot of surface work. So Gaga XM has brought out a new surface pack which layers on top of existing surfaces, which is amazing. And in particular, I'm eyeing up these small pebble ones. So we've got a sort of slightly more solid surface here. I can show you this one. And then we've also got ones which are a bit more patchy, if we take a look at this as well. So we're going to be covering up a lot of our cliffs with this. But also this, in combination with our existing gravel surfaces, which we've had for a while, when they're sort of layered on top of each other, you can see here, it starts to look a little bit more like our actual natural cliff texture. So we've sort of got the orange of the pebbles coming through and the grey of the gravel merging in together there, which I think looks pretty awesome. So we're going to use quite a bit of that, layered in with decals, layered in with some overgrowth bushes, piles, maybe other little props dotted around here and there. Of course, our water down the bottom. We're going to need to get rid of the fences. Yeah, there's an absolute ton to do around here. Of course, the industrial area, and then we also have quite a bit of work to do on the residential neighbourhood too. So not only the educational school area and the parks around there, we've also got these condos that need decorating. We've also got this commercial district down here that needs finishing, and a ton of detailing in and amongst the houses, although we are going to leave the area on the outsides quite plain for future development, so it'll just be sort of internal in the actual neighbourhood for the time being. But I'm not going to go too OTT with the residences. It's going to be more focused on this rather large ore mine. So let's crack on. So here we have the start of the town of Tinny, and yeah, I think it's quite nice. Like I said, I haven't really done too much detailing around the residential, but I have done a little bit around this commercial district down here. So we've just added in some extra parking at the back with some walls and cracks everywhere and a little bit of trash, of course, a few parked cars, some extra boxes, that sort of thing. And then out the front, we've just kind of finished it off with a few extra surfaces and this little cafe area, which I thought was kind of cute on the end here. And actually having this sort of highway, ring road, outer road is working quite nicely. There's a lot of traffic going up and down it, and actually looking at pathfinding, it does seem like all the trucks going to the industry are actually using this highway road. I say that as there's no, there's no cars on this end, but instead of using this sort of more internal road that you can see up here, they're definitely going round on the highway rather than cutting through the district, which is good news indeed. So yeah, it's all kind of looking quite nice. In this centre little bit, we did do a little bit of work with Gaga XM's new surfaces. So you can see it's a little bit more worn where the invisible paths are, and perfect timing because you can see someone's actually using it there. And then we've added in some of the flower decals, just little pops of yellow in the middle here too, which I really, really like. So we have actually changed the theme as kind of from popular demand from you guys in a couple of videos ago to the Volcora grass. So it is now more kind of patchy naturally, but if you're just on the base game, adding in these yellow little dots and these little extra flowers and the subtleness of these surfaces is just amazing and really, really adds something, I think, to those vanilla surfaces in particular. Obviously to this surface as well. And over here we have also used one of T-Gon's cricket pitch marker things, again with some of Gaga XM's surfaces laid over the top of actually a vanilla grass surface here, which I think looks quite nice. And then over in the school I did also decide to actually add on the extension wings here. So we haven't added on the big one, so there's another one which adds like 1,000 student capacity, basically like a whole nother school on it. But we've just added in 2 of those because it was getting quite full already. So we have got actually more than enough elementary capacity at the moment, probably for the first time ever, and it probably won't last long either, but there we go. So we've added those in, and then I extended the car parking up here because I mean gosh, just with this low, I think it's this low rent unit from the Southwest pack, there's just so many cars. They were all parking all on the road, you can see that here. So actually switching up this road as well to a regular one so we can add the grass borders and take off some of the parking has helped here. But again, having this huge car park in here as well has also helped that fact. So around the condos, I haven't actually done too much. We've just added in some grass because I do think that further down the line, there's likely to be quite a lot of redevelopment in this area. I did a poll on the channel recently and you guys were very much in favour of sort of naturally progressing towards the downtown rather than jumping in. So this is kind of, I guess, the sort of start of it. Although, you know, Fewhaven and Gaudy Bay and Atkinson and all the rest of them was definitely the start. But here, this area is likely to change. So I don't want to do too much customisation to it and waste all of that time. But I think it looks quite nice for now anyway. And then coming on down to the industry. So I did add in another little gas station over here. Plain and simple, nothing really much to that. And then we come on to the big industrial area. So we've got some yard extensions like this one over here, which you won't have seen as part of the time lapse just because there was a hell of a lot of footage on this one. But yeah, we also have this car yard, which you would have seen. So yeah, really like this actually. I think it's come together quite nicely. We've also got some mopeds and motorbikes and stuff over here. And then a lot of the road maintenance depot vehicles. I'm assuming they're like breakdown trucks is kind of what I'm going for. Snowplows as well, maybe not so needed, but they're there anyway. We still have a lot of smokestacks, but I'm hoping over time they'll kind of go away because I did get rid of these 2 over here and they've already popped back in. So we'll see how it goes over time as the companies change. Yeah, a little row of sort of more warehouse style buildings over here. We've got our ore storage all dotted around, although most of them are not active. It is still only this one over here, the full skill grinding company in session in that warehouse. And then we come on to the actual ore mine itself. So here is the view from the top, which I quite like. There's very distinctive sides to it, as we kind of saw on Google Earth. So obviously the natural old mining site, which nature has taken over on, and then the side which is still being mined and in operation in the current times. Now I had a lot of drama over this actually. I was kind of debating whether I'd made a mistake covering up the whole area with the actual ore district area, but I think it's okay. I'll come back to that in a second, but just looking at the entrance for the moment, this is it. Now, there's an absolute ton of decals down here to try and get this sort of natural worn effect to it. There's maybe a few road signs and no U-turn signs I could definitely trim off here that aren't particularly realistic. We've got a few trucks and odd bits of trash and rubble and things like that lying around, but I wanted to make it all seem fairly sort of dirty and sandy and dusky and used and old, like it's been here for a while. But then we've got all this sort of modern storage equipment, I suppose, here too. Then you come down into the actual ore mine itself. And again, this whole thing is decals. So I'm actually getting some frame rate issues looking at decals for pretty much the first time ever in this game, which is quite astounding. But this side, we've used Real Vision decals all the way up on every single layer here, making sure that they're snapped vertically so that they sat nicely on the flat bits and not on the actual cliff bits. But I think I kind of like the effect of it. I think it works quite well. And then adding in some rubbles and bushes, small trees, boulders, loads and loads of small rocks everywhere as well, actually. So when you zoom in close, you can see all of those tiny small rocks all over the place, which I think is pretty cool. But yeah, then if we come down into the bottom again, tons of Real Vision decals, and I tried to use some of them to create what sort of looks like from a distance piles, or where, you know, sand or coal as this is meant to be. I mean, we'll come on to that in a second. Yeah, it was maybe piled up previously. And then I really like these sort of track mark decals that you can see here and over here. That sort of adds something to it, especially when it's piled on top of other decals. So it's sort of hidden away and it's not quite as stark as the actual just raw decal is itself, if that makes any sense. And then we do have a couple of piles of makeshift coal using asphalt texture, actually. But yeah, there we go. It's what I had to work with. But I think the one thing I really struggled with this is the fact that it just doesn't look like coal. But I think I kind of have to accept it is what it is. And it doesn't really sort of realistically go together perfectly here with the actual purpose of the mine and what it actually looks like. But I think it's kind of come out okay. My main concern was actually making sure that we could see these ridge lines, because once you put that ore surface and that ore district over the whole thing, they just almost kind of disappear. You can't really see them. So I've shadowed and used surfaces on every single one of these cliffs here. So if I just come in to move it, we might be able to... Yeah, well, you can see one there. There's another one. There's another one. So every single one. This took quite a long time, I will admit. But yeah, we've shadowed every single cliff surface just so you can see it a little bit more clearly, which I think the effect comes across, but it's not perfect. It could use some refinement. I just didn't really have, I suppose, the right surface for the main ore area to make this look right. But Gaga XM surfaces, again here, just to create those shadows are absolutely perfect, because you can still see that essence of the ore surface underneath. But it just gives it that slightly darker look so that we can clearly see those ridge lines there, which, yeah, I love. Then we come down to the little pond in the middle. Again, a whole ton of decals all around this to try and blend it in a little bit more naturally. I definitely haven't got the colour of the water right, but I may do some playing with that off camera and see if we can get it a little bit more sort of muddy rather than pure crystal blue like it is at the moment. Then we go up here to the second ore site. Plain and simple, really nothing up there, to be honest, worth really talking about apart from surfaces. But there we go, it's definitely a scar on the landscape, which is, I mean, in all essence, what we saw on Google Earth as well. So I'm kind of pleased with how it's come out, actually, bar the fact that it just definitely doesn't look like a coal mine, but yeah, there we go. So for today, that is going to be it. If you have enjoyed the episode, likes, comments and shares are really greatly appreciated. If you've really enjoyed the video, ways to support the channel are in the description below, but that is all from me for now. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you again next time. Bye bye.